as I think Laura said yesterday, workshop has been around. The format's been around for over 30 years. It was just recently, within the last few years, that these units of study were cut out. But actually, the format of the workshop, that's been around. When I started teaching at Laughlin, like the second year they opened, back in 91, we did kind of reading and writing workshop. And that was the newest thing kind of at the time, but we didn't have materials to teach like mini lessons. We just kind of had to develop all our own lessons. And that's really nothing new. I mean, teachers are always creating new things, but you know, being a new teacher, I really didn't know if I was teaching good stuff. So just kind of went on what I learned in college, and we collaborated a lot. So it's good to know you guys have good sound lessons that are based on the Common Core that fits in the workshop. But workshop is nothing new. So this is a really good visual of what workshop looks like. It's, you know, if you look at it as a pie chart, you start with mini lesson. That's where I teach. Okay, that's 10 minutes. So 10-minute mini lesson, and then off you go. You send them on their way, and they have this wonderful time, about 40 minutes. Now, you don't always start out with 40 minutes because not all kids are ready to do that. You work, this is your goal, to work up to 40 minutes of independent and partner reading. This is conferring in small group. This is the powerful part of workshop right here. This is where the individualization, the differentiation, all that happens during this time. You know, teachers might think, well, that's sustained silent reading. I'm going to sit at my desk and the kids are just going to read. The lights are going to be dim and everybody's going to be reading. No. It's really a busy time, especially for you. That is the hardest time, I think, that we've found out. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. You know, we're constantly reading up on things that teachers are putting out. I'm going to share with you, I think it's the end of the week or maybe today, I'm not sure, the end of the day, about some resources. Yes, it's the end of the week. Some other resources where you can read things teachers are doing and some things to help support you during this time. But you really need to train your kids for this, you know, your expectations for them during that time, and when can they interrupt and when can they not interrupt you. And so we're going to spend a lot of time today working on what goes on during this independent time. So we're going to break that down today and kind of go over that. And then the end of workshop time ends with a share, and that's 5 to 10 minutes. Oh, during the middle of this, though, sometimes you stop and take a break and do what we call a mid-workshop teaching point. So kind of breaks it up a little bit. It also kind of helps hold the kids accountable. You know, you might tell somebody, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let you read for a while, and then I'm going to stop, and we're going to talk about what you're doing in your writing. I want you to, you know, I'm going to talk to the class about this. So, you know, it's kind of, it's a little break, and it's a little chance for you to teach something. And in the front of your unit books, I know Amy had you look at those yesterday, it had what the mini lesson was, what you could confer about, what the mid-workshop teaching point could be. So you don't have to create your own mid-workshop teaching point. She embeds those in the lessons for the day on what you could do for a mid-workshop teaching point. So that happens during this time. But if you see something that you feel like your kids are doing or somebody's doing really good that you want to talk about, you can use that for your mid-workshop teaching point. And then the share is the last 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a time where a student will share. You're going to choose that. You're going to, you know, they're not just going to get up there and read something from their book, but it's kind of something you want to showcase, a learning tip or a strategy they were using or something they noticed about character development that fit with what you did in your mini lesson. And a lot of times the share is what gets left out because you run out of time, it's time for recess, or we got to go to PE or something. I mean, you know, life gets in the way. But we have found that when teachers are saying, the kids just aren't accountable. They're just not. They're off task. we said, are you doing the share at the end? You know, are you giving the kids a purpose during this time, something to work for that you could do it through your share? If they know they're going to have to share, that's kind of something to have them work for too. They never know. Maybe you never know who they don't know who you're going to pick to share sometimes too. You could do it that way. So don't let this go. Try to keep that. And I think it's pretty powerful. It's only 5 minutes, but the kids like it because they're going to get showcased and they can learn from each other during that time. So this is really how it looks for reading and writing. Except you just, instead of read, it's write. So it's really kind of this is a workshop format. So that's really the what it looks like. Now in your folders, I want to show you our USD 489. Behind the pacing guide was the ELA framework. You can pull that out. Okay, and I guess this is kind of this is your guide for what's expected of you to teach for reading and writing. I mean, of course, you have your materials that have your lessons in them, but this is what it should, this is your Bible in a way of the curriculum for reading and writing. So you can see at the top it says 60 minutes each. So our administration wants to value this time. You need to find an hour for reading and an hour for writing workshop. And so there's the 3 basic components. You have your mini lesson. Okay, that's 10 minutes. Today, Mary's going to go over each of these parts of a mini lesson with you. Okay, so the connection, teach, active engagement, and link. That's all in 10 minutes. You do all those things. And you'll see those parts as you read through the lessons. So, okay, if you turn the page, the second component is the independent practice and the application time. That's about 40 minutes. Like I said, you can't expect everybody to start out at 40 minutes. So especially in kindergarten and first grade, you may do 10 minutes or actually 5 is your goal. One of the lessons in second grade, and I think Kaylee, maybe you saw this, I'm not sure, but you weren't at the beginning of the year in second grade.
I was in now.
Okay, so one of the mini lessons is how to become a stronger reader, and they actually have a big timer that the teacher makes that means, okay, today we're going to go 6 minutes, and so she just moves it over, kind of like a little thermometer type of thing, and then our goal is we want to try to get to 20, and then anyway, so just add to that every day. So it starts out small, so then you might be thinking, well then what do I do with the rest of the time? If I'm only doing 5-10 minutes independent reading, that's a time that these K2 teachers can bring in things like their balanced literacy. They can use some of that time to do phonics, word work, shared reading, where you read poems and different things like that and try to bring in some more spelling and word work. And then partner reading. So you can do some partner reading during that time. So, it's just kind of, you're going to be reading about that in your book, especially the primary. It'll talk about those components of balanced literacy, how you can work those in. So that's the 40 minutes. And one really important thing to remember during that time is that it's kids reading books that they self-select at their independent reading level. So during, I think it's the management section we're going to read about, you'll learn about shopping for books and how they choose their books and things like that. So, and then you're doing conferring, you're doing small group work, so you could be doing all kinds of teaching during that time. Same with writing workshop. They're writing instead of reading during that time. And then we have a little section on here, the architecture of a conference. And I'm going to be talking about that this afternoon with you, what the parts of a conference. You do a research part, then you give a compliment. You'll always have a teaching point. You'll show them how to try it. You're going to coach them through it, and then you're going to link at the end. So that kind of sounds like a mini lesson. If you looked at the parts of a mini lesson, the conference kind of follows that. Now, you don't have to be perfect. Okay, what did I do for my coaching? What was my link? You know, you don't have to be perfect, but you just kind of want to keep those parts in mind. We're going to show you some videos today that are going to be really good, and you'll see those parts, the language the teacher uses. So, okay, that's conferring, and then if you turn the page, also during that time, small group. Laura's going to talk about small group structures today. You might be doing guided reading groups, which don't look like traditional guided reading groups if you're familiar with 30-minute traditional guided reading groups. They're shorter, much more, just kind of a quick overview of the book and read, take out the tricky parts, let the kids read, send them on their way. It's just a way to move kids up, hopefully into that next level. When you're having kids that are stalled out at a level, and it's like, I got to do something to get them moving, you can use a guided reading group to meet with them a little more often and get them going. Or a skill or strategy group, and this kind of explains the difference. A skill or strategy group, when you notice there's a certain group of kids that are having the same type of behavior with their reading or writing, you can pull those kids together into a strategy group and teach them how to use a certain strategy, or teach them a new skill that's going to help move them forward in their reading. So it's a little bit different than a guided reading. The guided reading is to move them up to a new level, and the strategy is to teach them a new skill or strategy. All right, so that's all during the independent time. And then the third component, the sharing. Every workshop ends with a share. Tells a little bit about that. And then we have the additional components of balanced literacy for the K2. They need to do that. Like I said, sometimes it's during the workshop at first, but once they get their kids worked up to reading more independently, you don't want to take that time away from them. You want to, like we learned yesterday, kids learn to read better by as much practice as you can give them during the independent time. So outside of workshop time, a lot of the K2 teachers are doing the balanced literacy, which includes the read aloud, the shared reading, the word study. Okay, getting back to read aloud, that's something everybody does. And you can do that. That's not during workshop time. Generally, you may share a little something in your lesson. It might say read from your mentor text. It's just a little blurb. It's not a good amount of time of, that read aloud when you're just reading to them and they're enjoying the story and, it's your time to read to them. Everybody does read aloud. I even think middle school does read aloud, so they're doing it up there. Too bad high school can't have time to do read aloud, but everybody, I read aloud to my daughter freshman year. She was doing the Odyssey, the Iliad, the Greek mythology, and the language structure, the sound structure of that. She's like, I just don't understand it. I can say the words, but I don't know what this means. So I read it to her, and then we'd stop and talk about the characters and what this means. And then she started getting, after hearing the language and how the sentences are, it's kind of like Yoda talks or something, once you get used to hearing that language structure, then she was able to do it more on her own and enjoyed it a little more in class. She kind of felt like she could pass the quizzes. So anyway, just getting used to hearing that language and then do it on her own. So to me, read aloud can go all the way up. Okay, that is your framework, and that is also on our ELA tab on the 489 website. All right, so I think we need to start with you guys reading Lucy's words about the Big Picture of Reading Workshop. She'll do a much more eloquent job of explaining it. I just kind of gave you a quick rundown. So chapter 4 is for the intermediate teachers, 3-5 grades. You're going to read pages 27 through 34, chapter 4. Primary is chapter 5, 48 through 55. And then I have a little video, and that is what we used to do. I think we only have see, is it just Ashley that's teaching second grade? Do we have any, we don't have any kindergarten or first grade teachers? Oh, you
First.
guys, okay, you're first. Okay, so in that primary book, they talk a lot more about the balanced literacy, and I have a video, and I can just send it to you guys if you want to watch a shared example of shared reading. I'll just send it, yeah. Because, you know, I think a lot of times teachers aren't sure what shared reading really looks like. Sometimes it gets confused with read aloud. And read aloud isn't as interactive, whereas shared reading is really interactive, where you might have the kids come up and point to things or find words. So anyway, this teacher in that video does a great example. So I'll send it to Ashley and Ann. And, okay.
We'll start
so
with.
anyway,
Thank you.
middle school is going to do chapter 5, pages 49 through 58. So it's a pretty meaty, there's quite a few pages to read there, but it's going to be kind of a review since we've kind of gone over this. We've talked about the framework. It's just really the big picture. We'll talk a little bit about schedules. So middle school schedule is a lot different because you have 40-minute periods unless you're a block day. So that the middle school teachers have kind of worked through that. Okay, so while you're reading, if you could just jot down some notes that stand out, some things that stand out to you that you want to share out with your group. So how we're going to group for this after the reading is I'm going to have try to do this, a primary, an intermediate, and middle school. And so that way you can share, see how much of this is the same and how much is different. Really, you're going to find out a lot of it's the same, but you may have some separate things that they didn't have in there. So it might be kind of fun to discuss it that way. Okay? So we'll split up into our groups later. If you just want to start your reading, I'll probably give you about 10 minutes. It'll take a good chunk of time just to read that. Any questions before we start? Okay, just have your Post-its handy and jot down some thoughts as you read that you want to share.
Sure, thank you.
Grade levels, but I think we'll share out that way, but let's go ahead and discuss in like grade levels. So Anne is first, Jenny, you
Second.
Second, so we have first, second, and then we have second and second,
We don't know.
possibly. And then Kaylee, since you're second and third, do you want to do second? And I know you read third, but maybe you kind of want to hear what they're talking about. So let's do Jenny, Ann, Kaylee, Rebecca, and Ashley. Do we have anybody else doing second or first? Okay. Would you guys mind bringing your books and going out to the hallway maybe? This is so small in here. We'll do discussion. Since you read, that would be great. You guys can follow with Amy. Yeah, what did you read? First? Yes, yeah. That's great. Okay, and then, let's see, middle school is Amanda.
Just put middle school and intermediate
Okay,
together.
yeah, I was
Very
thinking
similar.
we had more, but actually we do, but she's not here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so how about, let's see, that's kind of a big group. We could do 3 and 3, or you guys all want to do together? It's whatever you want to do. All together, okay, just pretty much, okay. Just kind of go around and share thoughts.
I was wondering why.
Yeah.
Oh, girl. They didn't know what to do that.
Okay, so,
They didn't have a caseload.
I'm gonna get out the middle school book. What? Okay, the middle school guidebook to me is the best one. It's the last one that they had published, and it's to me, it's just it's so clear.
Yeah.
So I love that middle school guidebook, but,
Well, I have 5th grade.
oh, you do
So,
have
as a
fifth
spec,
grade?
yeah, so,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, all right. Yeah, you might want to get that sometime.
Yeah, I'll look
It's
into that.
really good. But, well, let's just start with intermediate then. So, let's see, who wants to start sharing something about the mini lessons or independent time that you want to share out?
Well, I wrote down something about like that each mini lesson has a strategy for students to use in practice. And so like when I was reading, it said, there's up to what, 21
Yeah.
each unit of study.
Yeah.
So that's 21, if I'm correct, 21 strategies within just that unit.
Well, and I didn't take it as 21 strategies necessarily. I took it as, like, that's multiple opportunities. That's really good for special ed kids. So
Yeah.
multiple opportunities to even practice whatever, however many strategies they're getting.
Yeah.
It's good to have a lot of opportunities.
Yep.
And they build on each other, like you said, the bends.
Yeah.
You're going to go this way for a while, you're going to learn about that, and then it's going to kind of take a little bit of a turn, but you're still going to talk. So they really build, and they do spiral over the grade levels too. So, yeah, that's good. Yeah, and they say 5 weeks is all you should spend on a unit. So, and Lucy says when you go over that, it just bogs the kids down. They get tired of it. They're ready to move on after 5 weeks. Yeah. So, yeah, good time.
Have you heard if they like move kids up and down in special ed by skill in these things, or do they typically put them in at a level or parallel gen?
Usually how they do with special ed. So we've always said the kids are part of their regular classroom. That's the most important. They hear the mini lesson in their regular classroom. And then they usually get support during that independent time. If not all of it, part of it kind of depends on how many minutes the student has. The IEP trumps all, really. And you have kids that are not ready. They're in 4th grade, but they may not be ready to hear that 4th grade mini lesson. They may be functioning way lower. So, it kind of depends on the student. But it's worked out pretty well. They're in the classroom for the mini lesson. They shop for books in their room, and then the special ed teachers will sometimes reiterate that mini lesson, just kind of talk about the main points. Sometimes they pre-teach the mini lesson, and then when they get in their classroom, they've heard it. So it just kind of depends. Daphne Brown is the K1 SPED teacher at Lincoln, and she's coming on Thursday. We're going to have a panel of teachers, so that would be a good question to ask the teachers on the panel. How do you handle your special ed kids? And Daphne can answer what she does, and that's kind of how we do it at Lincoln, is the kids are in there for the mini lesson. There's para support, of course, in the classroom if they're in there for their independent time, but sometimes they're pulled out and they're individualized more. Their conferring is going on in the special ed room. So, yeah. Questions? Okay, what did the classroom library, let's talk about that.
Actually, that's one of the things I wrote down. I have a collection of at least 1,000 books.
Yeah.
When I had like a book, one of those bookcases, not so big. So maybe 100 or so, I don't know. But I looked at that and went, okay, that was a fail. Like,
Yes.
I mean, obviously, we in Australia, you take it to the library every week and they get a couple of books down and stuff. But, I don't know, look at that.
Right.
Have enough.
Yeah.
But no one
And-
really sending them,
Right. Well, and you
Oh,
should
yeah.
come into a classroom that has a good library, because Leslie, I think you're taking Leslie Carlene.
Yeah, I
She's
think,
done
yeah.
all the reading
Yeah.
for all the 5th grade. They departmentalize that, and
Yeah.
I think the writing Mindy does. So she has a great library, and I think all the classrooms, they also have books in there, so they can bring from their own classroom. But Leslie had a good start. Plus, our district purchased the Teachers College leveled libraries, 1 per grade level for each school and each class, each set, team. So 5th grade got a 5th grade library, and those are great. And then each building also has multiple copy libraries in the library itself. I'm so glad you're here. We need the librarians are so important, and I'm glad they come to our training, because you're called upon a lot for things. But The multiple copy books, you can also pull from those for your book clubs and different things, so those are in the library. Public library is also another thing. Online reading, we'd much rather the kids have a book in their hand, you get a lot out of turning pages and going back, but Hoopla, have you guys heard of Hoopla? That's through the public library, and all you need is a library card, and I think almost every kid probably has one. If not, they can get one really easily, but it's an app. I have it on my iPad, and my husband's working on building a new deck on the back of our house, and he's like, I need to go down to the library and check out their books on decks, do-it-yourself deck. I says, well, let's look what they have on Hoopla, and so he got 4 different ones on here, so it's a good resource too. Epic, have you guys heard of Epic? That's another online app that has books on it for kids to read.
There's a free one from the state if you think you have like special needs students and you want like print that's different for like dyslexia or whatever. Like there's a free app on that also from the state of Kansas. I can't think of its name, but it is on the KSDE site too.
Okay, there's the Sunflower Library, Kansas Sunflower Library. That's an association of public libraries. But here's what it looks like. You can search books. Actually, there's music. There's all kinds of things on here. But so Daryl Deck Designs, building decks. I think it's due the 25th. But it reads just like. Let's see. Anyway, open it up. Resume. And it looks just like a digital book. So, if you're needing certain genres or you're needing research, things like that, nonfiction, it's a good thing to go to. So, yeah. Anyway, Hoopla. It's good. All they need is a library card. So, one of the things I've always heard and read on the Facebook page from Teachers Colleges, I need more books, I need more books. And all the administrators keep saying, all my teachers just want more books. And so you can never have enough books. You can have 1,000 books and probably still want more. So
I had to say, well, my son's 19 months, and slightly off topic, my wife is just going crazy with books. We had to buy a big bookcase. He's got 3 full bookcases of books, but she's really good. She'll just read. But it's pretty amazing, like he'll say words and stuff, and he loves sitting down to read books, so it's pretty amazing. But yeah, we've got heaps.
Lots of
and
books.
she brings more back.
I know.
We're going to need another bookcase with the 4th one now. So,
Great.
but
that's awesome. And he's going to go to school wanting books, in his classroom. So if he's here in Hayes, that'll be perfect for him. So I like how they described walking into a Williams-Sonoma store and the surround, it's like you want to cook.
So what? Sorry, I don't know that. Williams-Sonoma.
Sonoma, it's a kind of high-end cooking store. Like you can go to buy bowls and, I don't know, plates, platters, it's just, everybody wants their kitchen to be like Williams-Sonoma or, there's other
Kind of
stores.
reminds me of like Bed Bath & Beyond.
That's what I was
Yeah.
just going to
But
say.
just a
Yeah.
higher end and just the kitchen.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
that higher end, right. So I love that. So your classroom library must make students want to read.
Well, and that made me
Pretty
think about like, what can I do when I walk back into my classroom? Like, what can I do with the classroom library? Like, I'm like, oh, Pinterest and start looking and seeing what the
Yeah.
teachers are doing,
Sure.
just to make it more exciting.
Right, inviting,
More
layouts,
appealing, yeah.
different,
Mhm.
Alternative seating, that's kind of been a big thing, in big classrooms. Some of the schools have big classrooms, some of them aren't so big. I don't think yours is so big at Wilson. We need some new facilities, and we're working on that. But yeah, I know some of the kindergarten rooms. I love the kindergarten rooms at Roosevelt. Michelle Callahan, I don't know if you guys know her. She had these rocking seats. Kids could sit in laundry baskets. Go get a laundry basket and sit in your laundry basket with your books. You want to make it inviting and feel like home, but you want to read. So you want to get them excited. You don't want it to be a chore. You want it to be a gift. So I love that. Let's see, the writing about reading, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So it mentions about Post-it notes, kind of like you guys are doing here. You take little notes on things that stick out to you, and that's in many lessons, teaching the kids how to maybe write down a wow moment, or their character did something that surprised them, jot it down. Sometimes the Post-it notes can be used to get kids a little more on task. I want you to pick 2 places in your book today to tell me about your character, or I want you to jot about 2 things your book said about that, put a picture in your head about your setting. Just kind of to try to get them into their book a little bit more so they can be used that way. But when we went out to Denver, when Lucy Calkins was out there, she said, writing about reading, and I think it said it in the middle school book for sure, I know I read it, only 10% of the time should they be writing. You don't want them to use that independent time and have to be writing in their writer's notebook during that time, or doing Post-it notes the whole time. 90% of that they should be reading, and only 10% writing about reading. But they are a good way to get them engaged in their books and try to keep them engaged, and it's something they can share out. So sometimes kids' books look completely full of Post-it notes, and my daughter, when she was in 8th grade, got to have writing workshop for the very first time. She was kind of older and didn't get in on it in elementary school, but her 8th grade teacher was in the pilot group, and Claire, she loved the Post-it notes. She was sticking them in there. Some teachers do the writing about reading digitally, so it just kind of depends. The teachers are so creative in coming up with things, and I learn from them all the time. So, okay, conferring small groups. Anything about that? It says during reading time you will want to lead several small groups. Some of these will be guided reading, others will be small groups of other sorts. The ideal situation is to be able to select the method for small group work that best suits your particular learners at the moment. So, what your kids need. If they're not stopping, if you're listening to somebody read and they're not stopping when it doesn't make sense, they say words and they just keep on going and it doesn't make sense, and you notice somebody else is doing that, you may want to pull them together and do a little strategy group about, and you start it out just like you would a mini lesson. I noticed that you guys are reading along, and sometimes readers, the words are hard for them and they're not sure that they're saying the right word, but when you come to a word you don't know, you want to be sure you stop. Just kind of a strategy about what can you do to figure out a word, or why is it important to stop when something doesn't make sense. Because if they're reading and it doesn't make sense, they're probably not comprehending very well. That's what we find in title. If we can just get them to self-monitor and stop when it doesn't make sense, use the punctuation, then they're usually going to comprehend a little more. So that's a big thing I notice that a lot of teachers are working on. If you're needing ideas how to teach those in your small groups, these books by Jennifer Saravallo that we showed yesterday, like one might be summarizing what's most essential. There's a strategy. It gives you the teaching point, and it gives you, less like a lesson of language to use when you're teaching it, different prompts for the kids. So, you can just use this as a resource on how to teach and what to teach. So it's really good because it goes through all different types of reading strategies. So it's a good resource. Anything else about that? Questions? Or how about mid-workshop teaching?
I like how it said it was almost just kind of like a quick little break for the readers to just kind of get back together.
Just about,
Okay.
maybe just about 5 more minutes. Okay.
So, yeah, just
3 more minutes if you're needing 3. Okay.
I like that, just a break. I think about if they're reading for 40 minutes, like be a
Yeah,
little
definitely.
break
Right.
between there.
And it said sometimes you may forego the mid-workshop teaching point too. If everybody's really into their book clubs, or depending on what they're doing, you may not want to interrupt with that. Sometimes you may do more than one, especially at the beginning of the year, it said. So, partnerships, that's something a little different in the middle school intermediate, is they don't always have partnerships in book clubs. I think they start that in second grade, at the end of one of the units in second grade. Book clubs, that's always a favorite. Did you happen to notice they talked about some videos on the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project's Vimeo webpage? I'll show you where to find those later this week too. But there's some videos of teachers with partnerships, looking at kids and how they discuss. You're going to be amazed at the way the kids talk in these partnerships. It's like, oh, these are fifth graders, you know, they're the language. But you have to teach kids how to talk like that. That may be a small group thing, is how to talk with your partner. And I do believe it's also in the mini lessons, how to talk with a partner. It's one of your mini lessons, but you'll get what you expect. If you just don't expect a whole lot out of those, or maybe you're just not sure what to expect, the kids aren't going to know what to say during this partnership. So you have to teach them that partner talk. So, okay, anything else? I feel like I dominated. Erica, anything?
No, I just found the mid-workshop teaching where it talked about, sometimes it's extending what was talked about, kind of reminding, but then it talked about, I think, how characters change as your mini lesson, and then sometimes it can be like, or how characters are complex, and then how maybe your mid-workshop teaching is just extending that with the setting. And so it's not just reiterating or bringing up points that they maybe need to improve upon, but it's extending it a little bit further.
Yeah, right. It's kind of what you see your kids need too, but there are those ideas there if you want those. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Tell them we're ready.
Sure.
Just about 5 minutes share. Of course.
So I don't.
Cheer up.
Or I'm on the
Okay, that.
Nice.
You can also tell Alexa to tell the joke of the day.
Oh, yeah.
And they're very appropriate, very, as adults we might think a little lame, but the kids love them, so.
Well, since we're telling funny stories for just a minute, I have to tell them my husband. So a good friend of mine gave me the little Echo Dot, have it in the bedroom by the bed, because I like to listen to music when I'm getting ready in the morning. And so my husband once in a while come in and he'll want to listen, and he'll say, now, what do we need to tell her? I said, just tell her what kind of station you want. Lexi, play Stony LaRue. And he's like, why won't she listen to me? She listens to you. Why won't she listen? I said, that's because you're calling her the wrong name. You're calling her Lexi. Her name is Alexa. Lexi, do this. Lexi, do that. And he cannot get it straight. Every time he tried to tell her to play something, he called her Lexi. And I was just laughing, because I thought, one of these days he'll remember her name, and then she'll do it. But he thought I had some sort of power, because she would listen and do what I told her to, and then he would say off. I said, you can't just say off, honey. You have to tell her, Alexa, off.
It's like Simon says.
Yeah.
And my husband is just
It was
a silly
hilarious
baby.
because he could not get it.
Yes.
I mean, it took him 4 or 5 days to figure it
I'm
out.
listening to this, and my husband was the same way. He'd say, play John Denver. And I'd say, no, you have to say Alexa, play John. And he'd go, Alexa, play John. He'd wait too long.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work. I was thinking, it's not that hard.
So at our house, her name's Lexi, half the time.
Well, sometimes I think my Siri is disobedient too. We're going to go on to mini lessons. And when we did our training originally, we really focused on mini lessons, and we said, get good at those mini lessons, and then, you've got it made. Well, our thinking has grown beyond that, but the mini lesson is still what drives your workshop, okay? As far as it sets the agenda for the day, it's the chance for you to teach, to make the connection with the kids. And so we want you to understand that the mini lesson is a very important part of the workshop model. I'll just put that back up there, but it seems like we're all finished up. Anyway, there are a few things that I do want to warn you ahead of time that we've heard from teachers as they do the mini lesson, and one is that it is incredibly hard to get down to 10 minutes. And the reason why is because I think teachers as a group, we like to talk, and we like to talk a lot. And sometimes we talk too much. And really, we need to remember that as much as we like to talk, kids don't always like to listen to us just talk out there. And so if you find that your mini lessons are going over, a good thing to do is just take your phone or your iPad, set it up in a corner, hit record, tape a mini lesson, and see just how much extra talking you're doing. Because sometimes all you have to do is kind of bring that down.
Or how much extra talking your students are doing.
Yes, that's another thing that can derail you. But the other thing is sometimes we feel like as teachers, you look at your students and you're trying to read them and you're thinking, I don't know whether they're getting it or not, and your tendency is to give more and more examples, and you think it's really clarifying it, and actually it's probably only making it more confusing. So that's why we say when you're new to the units of study, if you stick with the language in the mini lesson, it will help you stay on time, number one. They've really done a lot of work about trying to perfect that language to be as specific as possible. And so trust in that and use that language. And don't come up with a zillion more of your own examples, because what you'll do is you'll drag out your mini lesson. When you drag out your mini lesson, you shorten them the amount of time that they have to independently. Just always know that there's always a sacrifice. If you make your mini lesson 30 minutes, now your kids are only going to have a shorter amount of time to read and practice on their own. The other thing that you can feel good about is that those mini lessons spiral. Okay, so if you get that look of like, let's say I have 3 kids there that don't, you can just tell by the look on their face that they aren't getting it. They're going to get another opportunity to hear it again. Those are the kids that you want to note and say, okay, I'm going to pull up during small group and we're going to maybe do a little bit more with them. But know that if they don't get it this week, it's going to come up again when you teach another unit. It may come up in writing, it will come up the following year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And so it's just, there's many repeated opportunities to learn that concept. So instead of talking them to death, trust that it will come up again, and maybe the next time it'll be a clearer example for them, or they're just going to developmentally have a little more foundation and it's going to make sense to them. So those are kinds of the kind of things that we've heard from teachers that sometimes are stumbling blocks to get that 10-minute mini lesson in. Girls, do you have any other thing that you've heard from teachers that are complaints as far as, we really had a struggle in it initially. I think teachers now have honed it down and have learned how to keep that 10-minute mini lesson. We'll talk a little bit about in writing the mini lessons. Even Lucy herself will say she got a little wordy with the mini lessons in writing, and they're a little harder to do in 10 minutes. But 10 minutes is the max. If you can do them in 7 minutes, more power to you. So we just really want to be conscious of that, even if you have to initially set a timer and it beeps you. As reading recovery teachers, we have 10-minute familiar read, we have new book, we chunk our time, and we have a kitchen timer. And I never do a lesson without my timer. I always have to be looking to see, am I getting it, done, this part of the lesson in this amount of time. So sometimes you just have to have an external reminder too that, hey, I got to keep this moving. I got to keep going. Over talking, which I'm doing right now. Come on. All right. So the chapters there that you see, we're going to read those. The first part, I want everyone to read the very introduction to the mini lesson, and then the rest of the chapter is kind of long. It's the components of the mini lesson, so we will jigsaw that part out. But I want everybody to kind of get the beginning part of that read. So if you could read primary grades 79, 82, intermediate 35 to 39, middle school 59 to 65. And again, anything that you want to jot down that stands out to you. I think we need to stop where it says components of a mini lesson. I think that's the same in every book. So you read up to components of a mini lesson and then stop. Please number you off. I'm not going to be very creative, but I'm going to number you off. Then I'm going to assign you and your group to read a portion of the mini lesson, that's one of the components. And what I'm going to ask you to do is take a piece of paper, where did I put my chart paper? Is it back here? And just summarize the key points of what that component includes. You might list some language like that you might hear, like off you go, or let me show you. If there's any language that is associated with that component, and what is actually the focus of the different components. And we have, the components are the connection, and under the connection is kind of a subcomponent called the teaching point, okay? Those are listed separately in the book, but they're actually, the teaching point is in with the connection. There's the actual teaching, instruction, then there's the active engagement, and then there's the link. And whoever gets the link, they're the lucky winners, because that's a very little portion of reading. But it's still a very important part of the mini lessons. So I think I'll just number you off as, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number you off by 5. So Andy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That worked well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so it's going to be super fast.
I guess the reason why you avoid launching with a question is so that, like, if when you ask a question, you want a specific answer, and you're not going to get that, and so now your 2 minutes are blown.
Right. It's not a question-answer session at all. The only thing I would add there is that Oh, you can reread a previous anchor chart too. That's one other thing that you can do, okay? And it will crystallize what you will teach. So the language that you might use is, today I want to teach you that, and maybe that's on the teaching part. Okay. And it, okay, well, come on up. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Fancy tape. Let's see if it works. So I have to take it to
So
the
the
mail.
caution tape.
Well, it's not very sticky, so we'll just see.
Okay.
Well, in this section, one of the main points was that it's clear and concise and memorable. There's a goal, and a step-by-step procedure. It's a tip the students can draw on. It's not an assignment. But I think the important part, it tells you what to do and how to do it.
And what she was just saying, that today I want to teach you, not today you will. That turns it into the assignment, which it is not. It's a tip that they can draw on over and over and over, each book, not just today's work.
And that is a great distinction, because you want them to realize that when they go off to read, they're going to all be in different books, and what you're teaching them is something that you might be able to do in your book, and you might be able to do in your book, and it's not like just an assignment of, you know.
And you'll do it tomorrow and next week.
Right,
in-
right.
In science and, yeah.
Sure, but it is carryover. Okay, thank you. All right. I guess just take it out and put it under the table and we'll put it up there. I would say too that if, in the connection, you can personalize the stories to make them fit you. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, that if you don't feel like that story that is in the book relates to you at all, or you don't feel comfortable with it, feel free to personalize that. But the teaching point, I would strongly recommend that you stick with that language. Because I think as myself, that it would be hard for me to do a better job of verbalizing that. You know, somebody has really put a lot of thought into that, and just off the top of your head to come up with that language, probably not going to be as explicit. So I would say that today I'm going to teach you, and I would use Lucy's words right from the book.
Jenny made a good point earlier. She was talking about that explicit language. She said there were a couple times, I think you said, where Lucy's character persona or words weren't something that she felt her students would believe, be authentic.
Sure.
For her to say that. So she has incorporated her dog Pepper to help
A lot
her.
of my stories.
Sure.
They know.
And so she
Yeah.
says, when I use Pepper as an example, and kids feel like it's authentic
Yes.
and it's me
Right.
and it's much more. She just wanted it to be authentic. So that's something to keep in mind.
Right, and you could always say, I had a friend once.
Yes.
who-"
Yes. Use the
So
friend.
you can do it that way. All right, teaching.
Okay, for teaching, we talked about you have to bring books into the, well, you don't have to, but that's a great way to teach, is to bring books into the mini lesson, and they suggested reading the whole book before you come in here and use it to show a piece from, because then kids are wondering, well, what happened next? They're caught up in the meaning of the story. So you want to have read the book to your class at another time, so you're just referencing a part of the book when you're teaching. And there are 4 main methods of teaching, and they are demonstration, guided practice, explicitly telling and showing an example, and inquiry.
And so for demonstration, it's a step-by-step process that you actually do and show them how to do it. So an example that they had was putting on a shoe, so you walk them through each one of the steps, showing them how to do it.
And then guided practice, you actually coach them through doing it. That you will tell them, first you need to do this, and then they in turn do that, and then you move on to the next step, and they tell them the next step, then they do the next step, and then.
And explicitly telling and showing an example. In the book, they said this might be as fancy as like a lecture or a PowerPoint that you've created to teach something or show something maybe to kids a little bit older. You might lose some kindergartners and first graders on that one, but you can do that. And the inquiry way of teaching would be, you have a shoe on, how did you get it on? Just asking and letting kids figure it out themselves. How did that happen?
And then 90% of our reading and writing workshop mini lessons are going to rely upon demonstration as a method of choice.
Thank you. Yes, and, you know, inquiry doesn't, when you have 10 minutes to do all the components, inquiry just doesn't work very often because you don't have the time for the kids to experiment on things and then come to a conclusion. So that's probably why it's not used as often. Okay, active engagement.
Well, active engagement kind of bounces a lot off of the teaching part. One of the things that you say often is, now you try it. So it's kind of a guided practice. The teacher acts as a coach. It mentions in the text different ways that you can do that. It's like a turn and talk or stop and jots. It's a 2 to 3 minutes is all that it should take. So it talked about how using a shared text tends to be more time efficient. You could give examples of children's individual books, but then you would definitely go over your 2 to 3 minutes and the independent reading time. So setting them up for success, thinking this through and making sure that it's time efficient. And then also at the very end, it's important to summarize the teaching point and trying to use the exact wording to kind of bring it all home.
Great. That's the, and sometimes you just have them bring materials with them, and you say, now find a place in your book where you could do this. It's a very quick practice. I know they say sometimes then you can, even if you're listening as a teacher, you're kind of listening in to hear what they're doing, and at the very end of the active engagement, you might say, well, I heard so-and-so do this, if it reiterates what you want that main idea of the teaching point to be. And sometimes you might not hear it, sometimes kids can go way up in left field and you can still pretend like it. Okay. All right.
Sometimes we have to do a bit of acting.
Yeah. The link portion.
Okay, so with the link, essentially you're just going to restate what you hope children learn, so that teaching point. The key language that you would use here is readers from this day on, whenever you are reading, whatever it is. This is also the time where you would add the skill to your anchor chart, and then you would also review the other skills that are there as well. And then you want to send them off with a purpose. So whether that's, you have sticky notes at your table, you need to, you jot down a few things, blah, that would be a time to do that as well. So.
Okay.
They use some key language, kind of like what Mary just said. Like they'll say, like, you've already learned A, we're working on B, and now I hope that you can get C. And so it's kind of connecting it all together.
It's the summary piece that you want to clarify what you taught them, and you want to also give them a mission or a purpose for what they're going to go do in their independent reading time. So most of the time it'll say, off you go. And that's the key to them to know, hey, now it's my job, okay? And I'm gonna go get busy. And sometimes you might release them, sometimes you might say, when you can think of when you could think of a place you might do this in your book, you could go back to your, or if you know what you're going to be working on today, you may go back to your seat. And that way, you know, if there are some children who're still a little fuzzy about what it is they're supposed to go, they can remain back with you. You can clarify a little more with them before you send them off. So that by the time everybody gets up and goes to their seat, they should know what to do, because you're going to then start into the conferring small group work, and you need these kids to be already knowing what they're working on. Thank you.
And just one footnote too. Sometimes a lot when you're done with the mini lesson, you'll say something about today. When it's share, we're gonna work. You know, you're gonna share with your partner where you did that work, and that really helps give them a purpose when they're doing that independent time. If you don't give them that purpose, sometimes you tend to have a lot more off-task behavior. So they should always, be conscious that you're giving them a purpose, because that will really help keep them focused and accountable. Because they're going to know, I'm going to share where I did this today with my partner or with my teacher. I don't know what form that sharing is going to be, but there is an accountability piece, and they'll have to be very conscious to make sure that they know what they're accountable for. Otherwise, you will get kids who just will tend to not be real hard workers. So.
Can I add something to
Sure.
You already kind of said this, but I just wanted to kind of go a little further with it. Don't fall into the trap of doing your connection and then all their hands come up. And then, well, one time I went to the beach, and then, well, one time I was at the farm, and they all want to share, and that will make you go over 10 minutes on your mini lesson. They need to understand, I value what you're thinking and what you're going to say, but this 10 minutes is my time to talk and your time to listen. And you might ask them something like, how many of you have ever been to a beach? And just let them show their hands down. Or turn and talk about something, but not let them one at a time talk, or that really makes your lessons go too long. They need to know kind of from the beginning of the year, this is not your shared time where you're going to raise your hand and talk, or it just gets too long. We'll do that another time. We'll do that at a class
It
meeting.
comes up in management too,
Okay.
and talk about that.
Okay, but that will really make your lesson be too long.
Thank you. And one other thing is that sometimes when you send them off, what you taught in today's lesson may not directly work in the book they're working on. That's why you kind of review the anchor chart about other possible things they might do. Okay, and you'll have 4 or 5 things generally. So, sometimes it's not always going to apply to every kid in every book, but they should be able to look at the anchor charts that you have up in your room or that you're developing and know, they can do one of those things during their independent reading time. Okay, I do have a video to share you. It starts with a gal who is moving kids from their workspace up to the floor for a mini lesson. So about 1:37 or so is her actually getting the kids up there and then launching into a mini lesson. And I always think it's helpful to pay attention to even how she gets them up there in a timely fashion. And that didn't happen overnight. They probably practiced that at the beginning of the school. They go, sit down, come up. Okay, let's try that again. This is what I saw. Sit down, come up. This is what we're going to change. And so just listen to her. She does a 2nd grade reading lesson. So see if you can kind of identify the different components as you're watching.
So readers, we're going to set up for reading workshop today. So when I give a silent finger to your table, you will start setting up for reading workshop. As you see on the screen, when you come, I'd like you to bring your math notebook, which you have. That will be a clipboard for today.
You all hear
a pen,
good?
which you also have. When you're on the rug and waiting, make sure to look around and check what's new. If you forget, what can we do? We can look at the screen, we can ask a friend, or we can look around. Okay, I'm going to point to the table. Turn the chair up to back and set up for for reading workshop then. How's it look? I'm gonna turn your chair back to back. Can you please check and make sure your friends are all turning their chairs back to back, one that book baggy out?
And she being observed. The lady in the black is observing.
And let's see if we can try to beat the clock and be already on the rug in, let's see, 12, 11, 10, 9. You don't need to rush, just quick and quiet. 10, 8, 7, 6, 5. Great job, Jason. We're going to bring the materials. Jason, can you do a quick check? Is everyone set up for reading workshop? Just take a look from here. Just look around. Oh, you can get a chair. The chair. Do you see Jayla's chair? Get Jayla's chair. And just sit in your usual spot. Alex, do you have the whiteboard? Okay, let's be ready, and you beat the clock before it gets to 0, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, we're gonna wait. We didn't beat the clock, but we almost did. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready. So, I want our eyes to go over here. Readers and read aloud. Even remember we read this amazing book, Thank You, Mr. Fokker. But something we also realized that throughout the book, in the beginning, middle, and end, we came across so many tricky phrases, and we really stopped and used our brains and stretched them a little to think, what could the author really be trying to tell us? Because they sounded a little tricky. They didn't really make sense. It just sounded a little funny. So we really took the time to stop. And so what I want us to do, these actually from Love, let's just read a few of these phrases together before we start our lesson. Remember yesterday we practiced saying them in a smooth voice? So let's read this one together really quickly. Actually, does anyone think they could read it by themselves in a smooth voice? How we like really scooped up line by line? Monica, you wanna try it? Okay. I'll do my invisible spoon pointer, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Honey is sweet, and so is knowledge. But knowledge is like the bee that made the honey. It has to be chased through the pages of the book.
Oh, it's beautiful, Monica. Do you guys see how she's really been practicing scooping up each line and saying it smooth like a talking voice? So that was one of the tricky phrases we came across, and we said, oh, this doesn't really mean that you chase knowledge like you're like chasing it, like running inside the book. It just means that to get knowledge, we need to read books. And we said, well, this is so important because we knew that Trisha's family loved reading, and Trisha was so excited to read. Do you remember that? Thumbs up if you remember that. Okay. So what I realized is I was thinking last night, and I was like reading a bunch of books, and even I was like rereading Dancing in the Wings. I realized tricky phrases come up all the time in our books, and we're really good at figuring out the tricky words yesterday, and so I thought, oh, maybe we could use a little challenge today. We had a little practice in Mr. Fokker, but today I want to teach you that readers always stop at tricky phrases and try their best to understand them. They don't just like move on, because you know what? Those tricky phrases, I think the authors put them there to make us pay attention to something important that's going on in the story. So we can stop at tricky phrases and then really stop and ask, this doesn't make sense, but so what is the author really trying to tell us? Okay? What is the author really trying to tell us? Well, the first thing is you have to stop at a tricky page. So what I'm going to do right now is, I had so much fun reading this book with you yesterday that I actually went home and reread all the pages that we read together. And I actually came to a page that had a tricky phrase, just like in Mr. Fokker. I'd like us to actually figure this tricky phrase out together, because I feel like the author didn't just put it there by accident just to trick us. They put it there because it's really important to the story. As I read, put a thumbs up when you think we should stop. Like, be like, how about, no, not a thumbs up. Go like this. Everyone practice that. Like, give me like a stop sign when we think we need to stop and figure this out. Like, what is the author really trying to tell us? Because it doesn't make much sense. We're going to stop and figure it out and stretch our brains a little. You ready? Ready? This is when she's with Uncle Red. Sassy, he said, you gotta look at that as a gift. Being tall means you can see all around, so you always find the right path to take. No, I said, it means I stick out like a big acne bump in someone's nose. I'll never get to dance. It's a waste of time to go to the audition. Listen, gal, said Uncle Red, if I was tall and pretty as you, I wouldn't need to wear red so people know it's me coming and going. All you gotta do is make your mark on the world, is walk into a room. I see some people went like this at the stop sign. Do you guys think that's a tricky phrase? Chrissy, why do you think that's a tricky phrase? Why doesn't it make sense to you?
Because, like, some people don't know, what make your mark on the world means, so.
Yeah, what is the author really trying to tell us? I want you to think a little bit right now. And then I want you to actually stop and jot. Like, what's going on? Well, so far, what's going on in the story? Like, do you remember she just came back from the dance recital, right? And then the girls were teasing her. And then Uncle Red was in the car with her, and I'm thinking, he's saying this to her, so it must be important. What is it? What is the author trying to tell us? I want you to jot down what you think on the post-it one right now. And after you had a little time to jot, we'll turn and talk quickly about it. So jot first. What could it mean? Here's what you could write. You could write, this phrase could mean, what could it mean? Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So what do you think that could mean? Because she just came back, right? She just came back and she ran away from the room because what just happened?
What happened is that when she was upset that he thinks she agreed
With the girls that were teasing her?
because he's too tall.
So that's what you think Uncle Red is saying? Like giving her, do you think that's what the phrase means? Uncle Red's telling her to do something else? I know that I was a little bit stuck with this one, so maybe we should like turn it up a little. So think about this. What's going on in the story? Uncle Red is like giving her advice after she feels really upset. We said yesterday, she felt so upset. The girls were teasing her, saying, you're too tall. You're not going to make it to the summer dance festival, right? And so then Uncle Red is saying, all you got to do is make your mark on the world is to walk into a room. Make a mark on the world? Is he actually telling her, like, put a pen mark on the world and like check or X or like draw herself? What does he mean, make a mark on the world? Because I know that he's trying to give her advice, right? So so turn and talk quickly with your partner. Like, what's going on here? Why is Uncle Red saying this? What could this phrase mean? Turn and talk about what you're thinking. Wow, I heard some really interesting thoughts. Gabby, I know you can write that a little bit later, but can you just quickly tell us what you said? Like, what do you think, what is author really trying to tell us here? What is Uncle Red really saying?
Just don't listen, you just go on the stage and you do what you need to do.
You just go on the stage and do what you need to do. Ben, can you share a little bit about what your conversation with Nora? That was so interesting too.
Well, she might know that she might not know that she can do some cool things and since those girls said that she can't make it through when she was dancing, that means that like she just didn't want to do it again. She didn't want to dance again, but so that made her really feel bad.
So are you saying that Uncle Red is trying to make her feel better here? Like, just go do something else. Like, don't care about what those girls say. Like, make a difference. Like, go make your mark on the world. It's not like you're not putting like a little mark. You're actually like going and making a difference, right? Okay, so that was a really tricky one, right? But you guys did some really great thinking. Okay, so when you go back to your seats today, I want you to continue to look for tricky phrases in your books. Believe it or not, they're all over your books. I checked. Are you really ready to stop at them? Because yesterday you were good at stopping at tricky words, but today I want you to also stop at tricky phrases and ask yourself, what's going on in the story? What is author really trying to tell me? And if you come to a place like that, I'm going to keep this post-it right up here. You could write, look for tricky phrases. This phrase could mean, I'm going to challenge you to to try and fill up this post about 2 of the tricky phrases you find today. You can still be doing other postal strategies and thinking inside your books though. And even to help you even more, I'll give you a choice to help on our little like tricky word phrase hunt. If you want a copy of the chart, I'm going to come around and put it quickly at each table. Okay, raise your hand if you think this could help you really do some tricky word and phrase work today. Well, really every day, but this is just a nice reminder. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. When I count to 5, not yet, you're going to silently go back to your seats and start your work. And I'll come around with this, make sure we can get started quickly. Let's see if we can get started in our books right away. Keep your notebooks on the rug. Shh. Jason, make sure you go to your seat. Oh, I love how Anna and Chrissy are getting started. They even have their goal bookmarks out. They're checking in with their goal, maybe making a new one, checking the chart to see if they want to make a new one. If you want to, I'm going to put these out here so you can use your tricky. You could still be catching tricky words because you did such great work, but I thought we could use a challenge today and look for tricky phrases.
So could you kind of pick out the different components as you were listening? You know, they're not always just cut and dried. There's a flow to them, but you would, I've watched it several times. I can definitely tell she has all the components in there. She makes it seem very seamless. She's probably been doing it a long time. I know that there are some teachers that just lay their, a study book right there on their lap, and they pre-read it probably the night before to familiarize themselves with what they're going to be teaching. But they just have it laying right there on their lap, and if they need to look down and read something right out of the book. I had a 3rd grade teacher in my building say, just tell her kids, no, this is so important. I really want to get it right, so I'm going to just read it right to you. So I think that some people aren't very comfortable with just doing that. They feel frustrated if they have to look up and down and up and down, but you find what works for you when it comes to those mini lessons and make it work for you. But any questions? That is the part that drives the curriculum, is the mini lesson. So, all right. Liz?
We were going to start the afternoon, but
Okay. Take that. Or in that.
We were just a little bit off on time. We were saying, should we stop and take a break for lunch or go ahead and do the next part? And we can do this part, I think, pretty quickly. Books.
start with management after lunch.
Okay, on this part, just everything that Mary's been saying, you're going to think about that you are planning now. So get out your Unit 1. Get out your Unit 1 of what you brought. Hopefully you have a Unit 1. It's a spiral bound and it will say Unit 1 on the top. And you're going to think about if you were planning this now. I want you to take your time and read through the connection, teaching point, teaching and active engagement and link. You can stop there for a second if you want to, but I want you to time yourself reading this. Because I want you to think about, I am reading this to plan for it. I'm at home, I'm going to read this the night before, and I'm going to teach this tomorrow. So this is how I'm going to plan it. This is you're reading through it for the first time. I want us to read it, time yourself so you can have an idea like, okay, to plan a lesson, it's going to take me this many minutes. Okay? So, and then you're going to time your reading of conferring and small group work and share. If you want to, just read the whole lesson. Let's just do that. from the connection all the way through to lesson 2. Section 2 is what it says in your book. So you're going to read all of session 1, and you're going to just kind of make a mental note or jot it down what time it is and time yourself. So that this is just for you, so you have an idea, when I'm going to plan these lessons, how long is it going to take me to read a lesson? Okay, does everybody know what to do? You're just going to time yourself. It's not a race. You're going to take your time. We all read at different rates. And read all the way through that session 1 and time yourself. Okay? Let me know if you're not sure where to start or something. Okay, go ahead. You're just taking your time, reading it as if you're going to teach it. Grade and they're way longer. Some are kindergarten and they might be way shorter. So that's true also. Don't feel bad if you're still going. But what were some average times that it took you to read one whole session? Anybody want to just shout it out? 15 minutes, okay. Anybody else? 13 minutes? Anybody else? What do you think, Kaylee? 15-ish? Anybody else? Amanda, what about you?
4:30.
4.5 minutes? Okay. And we all read at different rates too, and some lessons are shorter, some lessons are longer, so we can't really compare, but that kind of shows you that it might be 5 minutes to read your whole session, it might be 15 minutes to read your whole session. And as you go through the year, you're going to get faster at it, but you're going to have some shorter lessons, some longer lessons. It might take you a little longer on Sundays to plan. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of how long you're planning. And that's not really planning it, that's reading it one time, right? So you might even be slowing down, you might be highlighting what you're going to say through there. You might, whatever your style is, you might want to read it all through once and then read it again, then highlight whatever your style is, however you want to do that. Okay, I think we need to stop there and take a lunch break. Come back at 12:30. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed your morning.
I don't know.
Is Amanda? We lose track of who's coming back and who, like I know Okay. I'm going to attempt to do for you a connection and a teaching point, and then you'll get to read and practice just a connection and teaching point. Remember how long it's supposed to be? Remember? Just a connection and the teaching point. 2 to 3 minutes. It's really quick. So don't get nervous about it. And you'll get to try one and practice with a partner. And you don't have to do it in front of anybody or anything, just a partner. Come in. Okay, so I'm going to do a connection and a teaching point for you. I'm going to try. You would probably hold your book, and if you would forget what you were going to say, you would just look down. I'm going to try to do it without my book, but last year I did forget what I was saying, so I'll try it. Okay, here we go. Second graders, come and join me on the floor. Bring what you need and come up here for reading workshop. It's great to see all of you today. I was thinking about you last night, and I was thinking when I was in second grade, my mom and dad had a giraffe on the wall, and it was a tape measure, and it was probably about this high, and they would have us stand against the wall like this. Oh, some of you have that too? Oh, yeah, okay. So we had to scoot our feet back against the wall and stand up real tall, and my mom would put a book right here, and she would measure to see how much I had grown. Some of you have done that too. And I was thinking, I wished yesterday I could have seen how much you had grown as readers. I wished, because I can tell you have grown so much as readers. I can tell because some of you finished books yesterday and you reread it. You didn't just sit there and waste time. You reread your book. I was so proud of you. You've grown as readers. And you didn't just read your book. You thought about, how am I supposed to read this book? You were thinking, how does this book want to be read? Does it want to be read with a silly voice? With a sing-song voice? A scary voice? Or a funny, a silly voice? You were thinking about those things, which was showing me how much you have grown as readers. So today I'm going to teach you that when you think about how to read, you're thinking about how to read a book, it helps to learn how to take a sneak peek of the book. Now I know you learned in kindergarten and first grade how to take sneak peeks of books, but this is a better way. This is a more grown-up way. This is a second grade way to take sneak peeks of books. Okay? So that would be a connection and a teaching point. I meant to tell you, pay attention for when I say, today I'm going to teach you, that's your teaching point. I meant to tell you to listen for that. Okay, you ready to give it a try? Okay, so like second grade, I think I did session 2. So you read, go to the next one. Do the same one I did, just look at session 3. And you're just going to, if you read session 1 before, probably look at session 2. And you're going to read the connection and the teaching point only. Remember, it's supposed to take you 2 to 3 minutes. Read it over a couple times. Practice it to yourself. Mine is, a half page probably for all of that. And you might have one that you might look at it and it's super long. Just maybe turn to the next session and do the next one. You don't have to do such a super long one. If you want to hold your book and just read it, because you think, I don't have time, if your anxiety goes up a little bit, I don't have time to practice this, and it's fine. Just read it off the page, that is fine. So you're going to read it a couple times to yourself, practice it a couple times, and then you and a partner, somebody you hopefully have connected with and feel kind of safe with, go out here. Of course, we all like each other. We're not going to judge each other or anything like that, but you can go in the hall, you can
Advantage that they're getting used materials.
Yeah. very true. You might have to highlight in a different color
Right.
or underline with pen, yes.
I'll just ask Angie, like, is there an online version that you can cut and paste your spiel only?
I don't think so.
But there have been teachers that have done that.
Typed it all out.
If they wanted to have those notes for then and the years to come, some teachers have just taken that, when they're going over it and planning that lesson, they
Yeah.
just type it out, print it, save it for the next year, because of that reason, they want it to just be really.
I guess too, if you videoed yourself, just with that piece, and you could save it for all of it. It might become a little less like, my kids are right there and I'm wanting to touch them, to interact with them. And I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think, isn't that what Christy will go and do that?
Christy, some teachers do it if kids are going to be gone, or maybe in case kids are going to be gone, or as far as I know, she presents it to them live, but she does have a recording. Maybe she records it.
No, I'm thinking
after
the scripting, the typing of the.
Didn't she type it all out? She kind of typed
I'm
out.
sure
What
she
she
probably
wanted
did.
to say
I'm sure she
and-
probably did.
What the session was,
Yeah.
and then she just pulls it out in the future.
I thought
It's
you meant
already
to
done.
record yourself, and then if someone's gone, then they can watch.
I
That's what
did
thought.
hear of some of the
But
teachers
some people do type it
kind
out.
of just wanting
Right.
that.
You just don't really want that much work for
Strictly
anyone.
scripted for themselves.
Okay, great
So I would
question.
imagine, like, for, like, the verbiage that is in here is not going to be the verbiage that you
Oh,
usually use or
absolutely.
Yeah,
feel
this-
comfortable
yeah.
with.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we want to tell you, 5th grade is hard. It is just hard.
Yeah.
So when you're reading that, Stu, and you're thinking, wow, this seems really high-level talking here, high-level language, it is. She and Lucy says, 5th grade is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard. So,
You know, I just don't want to, I mean, I haven't done anything to such a script, but I don't want to sound like a robot.
Sure.
You know?
exactly. And
So-
teachers complain of that too. They say, when I stand or sit and read it, I lose my kids. I just lose them because I'm just reading to them and they're bored with it. So that's why as you got to give yourself a chance to get better. I mean, that's going to take a little bit of time, but then as you get better, you can read it maybe and act a little part of it out and then read it again and just speak from your heart a little bit more and then read it a little bit more of a piece and like that.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I was reading through this and I thought, this is something I would want to do at home the evening before, read it out loud, prepare myself, so
Right.
that I get in front of the kids, it's.
More natural.
Right.
Yeah.
But then as you get going and you're teaching 5th grade and you need to be ready every day and it's writing too, it's a little bit of prep in that way. The good things too is that it's less grading, it's less in other ways.
Yeah.
It's
Less
more
prep work.
But it's,
Yeah.
a little more preparing for that, but a little less in grading and worksheets. Well, you don't need to do that. Less in finding other things to prepare. Less in that way. Great questions.
I've even like, in having to be like this, I've kind of pulled the kids into it. Like I said, sometimes it's like, what do you think? And their crickets are chirping and they're not doing anything. And I'm like, no, look right here. It says you're supposed to go, yay! Or, like I'm like, you have things to
Right.
participate in here too.
And you can't even say to them, I'm just learning how to do the workshop. You could say this too. I'm just learning how to do this, and I have to read this for a while to learn how to do it. But I want you to really listen and try to learn from what I'm saying. Or, you can even tell the kids that. And maybe after I do it for a few months, I won't have to read it anymore like that or something.
And so Lucy even suggests saying, this is really important work that I'm doing, and because it's so important, I don't want to get it wrong, and I don't want to mess it up. So if you see me referring to the book or reading from the book, it's because it's very important that I get it right. And just kind of present it that way so they know, they have that feeling like, this is important,
Right.
10 minutes of the
Yes,
day.
if you say someone famous named Lucy Calkins wrote this, these are her words, and I'm going to say her words because she's really good at what she does. You can say that too. So don't, this is such a mind shift from ways that if you taught before, from the ways you've taught before. And we're not telling you it's easy. Like, this is easy. Go off and do it. You'll be fine. You know, none of us are saying that because it's not easy. It's powerful. It's good. It's best for kids, and they really do well with it. But it's not easy. Any other comments, or especially 5th grade? It's not easy. Any other comments or questions or?
Oh, I don't know if it's okay or right or not, but doing my student teaching in 2nd grade, some of the mini lessons were small enough that I felt comfortable as I was planning. I just jotted down like bullets on a note card, just to kind of help me so it sounded more natural.
Sure,
but then I would always write the teaching point word for word, so then it would just be a little
I think that's
there.
wonderful. I love that. Sure.
And so
Yes.
the kids didn't even really notice.
I just say whatever work you've done, save it for the next time you do it, so you don't have to do it all over again. Your first year for sure should be the hardest. It should get easier. And you're coming to those lessons again next year. Well, not a lot, but the others.
We had 2 tough years.
Yeah, 2 years. Anything else? You guys did great. I'm so proud of you. Good job. But the first time I had to do that, it kind of raised my anxiety. I was like, oh, you did great. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can get
Okay, now, this unit is lengthy and detailed, but it's also very, very important. This is called management systems. And I'm just going to share with you that as we have gone into classrooms and worked with teachers as ELA support staff, we have found that the teachers who struggle the most with workshop are the ones who probably are not quite as strong in the management piece. And the ones who seem to have, you walk in their room and things are just humming along and everything looks perfect. I have been into a 1st grade classroom I went into, and that teacher had those kids on task, the entire group, the whole time I was there, which was about a half hour. And it was mid-year, and I thought to myself, this is amazing, because when I first started learning about this curriculum, I thought, we're going to ask 1st graders and kindergartners to be reading for 30 to 45 minutes a day. That just seemed really lofty, you know? It seemed lofty to me. So when I went into her room, I was absolutely amazed at what she had 1st graders doing and how they were doing it so efficiently. They knew what their purpose was. They knew where to go. And the transitions moved seamlessly. In contrast to that, I've been in other rooms where, say, you know, even upper grades, 3rd, 4th grade, where it was just you could tell the kids didn't quite know what was expected of them, and they kind of pushed the limits a bit, and the teacher kind of was struggling with, I can't get around to meet with everyone. I have so many behavior problems that I can't meet and conference with the kids that I need to conference with. I never get to all the kids I want to get to each day, and she was just pulling her hair out. So I want to caution you that you put a lot of thought into this part of setting up your workshop, because it will make or break you. It really will. I feel very strongly that you have to be very good with management and to be efficient and get done what you feel like you want to get done or need to get done. So keep that in mind as you're reading that. In our experience, this is the one place where if you start to feel frustrated, you might think, how can I manage this better and more efficiently? And one of those things might be going back and just starting from the beginning and do kind of a boot camp rehearsal of every step of the workshop until you get it to where you want it to be, because you have to have those expectations and hold them accountable. Make them do it, make them redo it, even if it's just going from one place of the room to the floor, from their desk to the floor. Practice that, and then she's going to talk about that a little bit. So before we start, I want you to we're going to stand and talk, to whoever's beside you, groups of 2 or 3. And I want you to come up with just a couple of single words about 2 things. Classrooms you've been into that, how would you describe classrooms that are well managed? What kinds of things do you see? What keywords would you say? Obviously, efficient. And then on the contrast, what kinds of things would you say about classrooms that are not managed well? Okay, and then we're just going to share out, so it's going to be a really quick little discussion. Describe a well-managed classroom and describe a classroom that's not as well managed. Okay, so I'm going to have you stand up because we're going to be doing a lot of reading. So stand up now and just move to someone and visit first. That you would use to describe a not such a well-managed, a mismanaged classroom, let's call it that.
Inconsistent.
Inconsistent. What happens is okay 1 minute, but then if it happens again, you're in trouble. Good. Chaotic.
Confusion.
Loud.
Disorganized.
Disorganized. Confusion. Kids don't know quite what they're supposed to be doing because maybe they weren't listening to the directions, or they weren't made to carry through with those directions.
Unprepared.
Okay, sometimes it might be unprepared teacher or even unprepared students.
Disrespect.
Disrespect. Why do you think that happens?
I think when I've seen it, it's just from those who just are not strong and they think, I'm here, I want to be their friends maybe, and so then the kids don't have that same
So they
respect.
allow it to happen.
They allow it to happen, and I just think it's not like it's just the kids are just not doing what they're supposed to do. You don't
Because they haven't really been, clear expectations, and maybe the expectations weren't there at all, or maybe they weren't high enough, or possibly they weren't made to meet those expectations. They were laid out, but the follow-through wasn't there. Okay, so now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, very well-managed classroom, what you would consider, what kinds of things do you see there?
Organized.
Okay, organized.
Defined spaces.
Okay, she says define spaces, so there's a place for your paper. There's a place where you go get your books. There's a place for you to keep your notebooks. So everything, it has kind of a purpose and a place.
Structure.
Structure. And by that you mean,
Well,
there's a
physical,
procedure.
verbal structure, like just
Visual structure.
Okay, sure. There's, he said, a structure for your verbal directions, you
physical.
physical space.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, calmer atmosphere.
I wonder why it feels calmer. Because the other one's chaos. And this we think of as calm. Maybe it's because we know what to expect. We know where things are. We know how to get things we need. It's clear, the purpose is there. Where to find it, like you said. Know where to go if I need a piece of paper. I know that I'm not supposed to sharpen my pencil during this time. I have to wait or trade it for one that's already sharpened. Okay, so great job. Those are all great things to keep in your mind. Also think about what students are doing. Obviously, we probably feel like students are working harder and more on task in a well-defined, organized, purposeful classroom. So that's our goal, right? Okay, so as we're reading, that's what we want to try to. Kids are engaged, they're interested, they know how to problem solve because all of those things have been laid out for them. All right, so we're going to start reading just the introduction on page 89 and 90 if you're primary. If you're intermediate, I believe it starts on chapter 6.
Yes, page 48.
Page 48, thank you for those page numbers because I have primary. So we're going to break this up. This is a long chapter, it's 10 pages, and it's a lot. Keep it down, ruckus in the back.
Come on, keep it down.
This is an unstructured learning.
Yeah. There's always one problem student in every class. Mary is it. section, like I said, we're gonna break it down, talk about it bit by bit. Right away? So yeah, that's exactly why. And then I also wondered why she had them set up the chairs and all of that stuff that where they're gonna go back to first, because I thought, well, I wonder if it makes any difference if they do the setup before the mini lesson or the setup after the mini lesson. Why would that matter? But then I realized, I think the teacher wants them to get to their places and be able to remember that mini lesson, and that's their purpose. You know, so you don't have to have all that stuff happening in between. Because to me, at first I thought, well, it makes no difference if they do that before the mini lesson or after the mini lesson. Then I got to thinking, well, if you want them to get to work right away, you want them to remember what you just talked about, it would be easier if they went straight to their spots and got busy reading. So that kind of made a little bit more sense to me after that. Tell me what else stood out to you. There's so much stuff in there, so many little things.
For me, the part that said, like, some teachers will talk over murmuring kids, but if you want your kids to know that words matter, maybe you won't.
Yes, I started that too.
Right there.
Yeah. Can you read that out loud?
All of it?
Just a little piece, whatever.
When you ask for attention, you should expect that children will comprehend and honor your request. The same children who are Teflon listeners, regularly letting instructions roll off without getting through, tend to be Teflon readers, regularly moving their eyes but not their minds over the words on the page.
Good.
If you regularly repeat yourself several times to be sure children take in what you've said, you're enabling your students to live as if they have comprehension problems.
Yes, I highlighted that myself. It's all about expectations, isn't it? When you say something, you expect it to be listened to and followed. And what if they don't? Then what do we do? That's the thing. So what if they're not doing what we want? They're not following directions. What's our next step? Just, what do you think?
Do you have them just go back and redo it the right way?
Yeah, I
mean,
think
if-
that's
like if it's
appropriate.
going from here to there?
Sure. Just an example, I was in a classroom where there was a student or two who were notoriously late getting to the carpet because their desk was such a mess, they could not find their reading folder or their book baggies or whatever they needed to be bringing to mini lesson. And so the teacher said, you know what? You've been late 2 days in a row and the class has been waiting for you to get here. So today, during your recess time, I'm going to have you clean out your desk. And so they had to use their recess time to clean their desk and get organized. And do you think they were late the next day? Probably not. So you just have to be creative and think about, ways that you can hold them accountable. You don't have to be mean or you don't have to be embarrassing about it or throw a big fit, but there does need to be some sort of consequence if they're not doing, if they're holding the whole group up. That's not okay.
Patsy Thoreau was coming to mind. She's such an excellent teacher, and I would see her saying, friends, we have a problem here. When I am talking, you are not listening. I'm talking to her class that way, and they all listen. So,
Yeah.
I mean, she's a great teacher.
Yeah.
She calls her kids friends.
We have a problem. What are we going to do about this problem?
And
And you could bring it to the class and say, class, we are having a hard time getting started on time. This is not okay. What can we do? And then I have some teachers who will say, you know what? It's really too bad that we've gotten started 5 minutes later than we need to be. I sure hope we don't have to have that run into our recess time because that means we'll be late for recess. Who wants to be late for recess? And that works with primary kids. I know it's a little harder with older kids, but I'm more of I think the younger kids are more my niche, so I'm not sure I have a whole lot of advice for 5th, 6th grade kids, but you have to get to know them and figure out what's important to them and how to hold them accountable.
One of the things it said was the best way I know to learn classroom management strategies is to visit well-established reading and writing workshops. And that's one thing our administration, starting at the top with Shanna Dinkle, the assistant superintendent has said, we want our teachers to do colleague visits if they, need that. And we, as reading recovery teachers, have always had to do colleague visits, and we learn so much from each other. And so and I really think in your first year in the district, one of the things you want to make time for is visiting other classrooms, and you can visit with your ELA support staff at your building as far as recommendations for teachers. If it's management that you're really wanting help with, we'll recommend somebody that's got that down. And it may even be in another building. It's good sometimes to go to the other buildings. If it's the mini lesson, or if it's conferring or something that you want to do a colleague visit and go see somebody that's an expert at it, definitely that we support that.
You definitely have the support of administration and staff to do that.
We can cover your class if we can. If not, you work it out with your team or something. But
it is kind of amazing some of the things you see that you weren't even maybe expecting to learn in that time, things that you pick up that maybe you didn't intend to go for, but you end up learning a lot more. Yes, I highlighted exactly what Angie was saying about you're not doing, Lucy's words were even a little bit harsher. She said, you do your students no favors when you collude with their tendencies to ignore your words. And I thought, remember when I told you she was very blunt, and she is. Also always try to remember to make sure your kids know what their purpose is and to give them time to prepare for the share. That's something that we found to be very helpful in keeping kids on task. If they know what they're going to share, they may not know the format of the sharing until the end when you decide how they're going to share. Maybe they're going to write it on an exit slip. Maybe they're going to go turn with a partner. Maybe they'll share it to you. Also, it's kind of nice sometimes if you share things that you saw going well and things that you saw students doing well during that time too. Even through the mini lesson, when they are doing that transition piece, always be praising what is going right, praising what's going well. Because we've learned through reading recovery that feedback is the most important part of learning, because even students that we work with will make attempts at something and not be certain that they're doing the right thing when it comes to reading. So by giving them positive reinforcement and feedback, they will then think, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, I did it right, and sometimes try to ignore the little things and focus more on the positive, and you will get more of that, hopefully. Okay, let's read a little bit about long-term partnerships and reading clubs. This could be a little tricky to organize sometimes, and you'll want to have a good idea of how to set up those clubs and partnerships. I'm going to talk to the person next to you about what criteria you would use to set up partnerships. How will you decide which kids to put together when you're forming a partnership? Think about how you would choose which students to put together. Gave you some suggestions on what kinds of kids would be material for a partnership. It can be a triad.
I think they work together. That is a very important.
This is the one that actually went to New York to hear about this workshop. Gave all of us, we were her co-workers at the time, brought one of these for each of us, and I have used mine a lot because it's high enough pitch that it does seem to get everyone's attention without being overly loud. So if you ever have a cute little chime or something, you might think about using that as an attention getter. Okay, what do you think about partnerships?
Same reading level.
Same reading level or very similar reading level as much as you can. What else? similar books or interests, and similar goals. Sometimes may not be exactly the same kind of goals, but once you get to know your kids, you'll be able to match goals a little bit better. And I think it's probably okay if they don't have the same goals, because they could, be more apt to help each other as well in different areas. And then also, I like it when they start making the clubs, because the clubs will be 2 sets of partners. And the neat thing about the clubs is the kids will be reading maybe the same author or the same kind of genre. Maybe they'll all be reading a mystery, and they will be reading something different, but then that's a great opportunity to discuss the characteristics of that genre or that area that they're talking about. For example, research, and they do some animal research. They might be doing 2 different kinds of insects. One group does an insect, the other does a different one, and they can then sit and talk about what their similarities are and what their differences are. And so you're building in that comprehension piece through their discussions. So it's really, I think the kids absolutely love the book clubs, and it's a great opportunity for them to discuss those things that we're teaching about comprehension and strategies and all those wonderful things.
And it's funny to see the way they push each other. Like, because my son's at Roosevelt, and like, look, he would come home with this book club, like, he'd be somebody, but like, they're like, so, I was like, you got your reading for now? He's like, yeah, I gotta read these next 2 chapters. And he goes, those girls, they just want to keep us going. And I'm like cracking up, and I'm like, good girls, like, keep them going.
Those girls are calling the shots, aren't they? That's so
But,
funny.
yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate, but one of the things that I tried to do, it didn't work yet, but, because I have kids on all different levels, I tried to partner with the middle school and the high school. So if they had struggling readers that were close to my kiddos, that we could partner them up to read together. And I thought it would be a good, like, role model.
Sure.
And then those kiddos that are struggling in the higher grades wouldn't feel so bad making those
Right.
mistakes.
Sure,
with
they would.
kids.
And you say it didn't work out, is that because they just haven't actually got
Scheduling,
together yet?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a neat idea, though.
Hopefully this year.
Yeah, great idea. Did you have something?
Yes, phenomenal teacher that we had that left this district, she told me a story about 2 kids that never wanted to read. 2 boys never wanted to read ever, and it was toward the end of the year, and she heard them, and she was about ready to go over and get on them at workshop time, and they're whispering over there, and she's like, oh, go over and tell them to be quiet. And this was 5th grade. She goes over to them and she listens in a little bit, and they had gotten into Harry Potter, and they were saying, how much do you want to read tonight? Well, let's read the next chapter. Let's read chapter 4. And then she heard them talking about it, and that had pulled them into reading because they were reading it together. And it was over the weekend.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was over the weekend. They were saying, how much do you want to read? And it really worked
And
with
she
them.
thought they were talking about something.
Right, she was ready to
juicy
go
gossip.
get on them.
And some of us even wanted to continue their book clubs over the summer.
Oh, yes.
They really love the book clubs.
They begged, yes.
I think there's a whole chapter on
Yes,
book clubs.
I think there is.
In intermediate and maybe the middle school.
So make sure if you are struggling with the idea of book clubs to read that part of the book. Just because we don't cover it here doesn't mean it's not important. The answers are in there to your questions and your struggles. You just have to, kind of pour through the material to find them sometimes. And I also wanted to go back just for a minute about what Ann said when we were talking about what do you do to correct those problems of the kids not following your routines or not doing, to your satisfaction. And one thing that I thought of that I've done before that's silly, but it works, is I've kind of made a big deal out of it to the class, and I'll say something like, who thinks they can show us today what it looks like to set up our classroom space for our independent reading time and then come to the floor for our mini lesson? Who thinks they can show us that? And you've always got, usually it's a couple of really nice little girls who are always, kind of doing everything they should be doing, and they'll, oh, please let me, And so you'll call them up and you just sort of, again, narrate what they're doing. Oh, I see they're putting those chairs back to back. I see they're getting their folder out. And they're kind of doing all this and you're describing what they're doing. And then you're like, okay, how many of you think you can do what they just did? So that modeling and talking about it, I know it takes time and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, do I have time to do this? But I'm telling you, if you don't make time for it, then you're probably gonna regret it later on. So do it right off the bat, up front, beginning of the year. Think about every little step that you're having them make through the routine of the workshop and teach it and do it until you get what you expect, basically. You just gotta keep after it. Okay, I'm not going to have you read the management. The next section is called management during the mini lesson because we've talked a lot about that already. So I'm just gonna read really quick from my notes. Make sure you have some hand signals. Thumbs up, turn and talk, stop and jot. Those are things that you're gonna do to control the level of noise and the amount of talking that's going on. So again, you've got to have an attention signal so that when you're ready for them to stop talking with their partner, you got to have their attention back on you, and it needs to happen very quickly. So practice that. Sometimes teachers even say, turn and talk about what you had for breakfast. And then you got to get their attention back, and they just practice that piece for a week. Let's see. We talked about how the mini lessons need to be quick and concise. Use your hand signals. Can you all turn to where it says read? The managing reading time, the heart and soul of the workshop. It's on page 96. This is kind of something I think you're going to want to read at some point in time. Does intermediate have the heart and soul of the workshop? Managing page 53. Page 53, thank you. Okay. Transitions are always smoother if children always know where to go and have their materials ready. An important concept in there is about, again, having a purpose for their work every single day. So making sure they are clear on their purpose. The other idea they talk about is how there's no such thing as being done. There's always more work to do, and that's something that you will probably find yourself saying. You know, the student might come and say, I'm done reading all my books. What? We're never done. We are never done. Look at this amount of books we have. You know, you just kind of have to say, oh my gosh, no.
You say when you think you're done, you've
just begun. Exactly. So you have to have a little chant ready to go because you're going to get somebody who says, I'm done now, what do I do? What do you say to the kids who come up to you and say, I'm stuck, or I'm stuck on a word? Okay, one thing that we suggest is having them look at your anchor charts about the strategies you've already taught. Asking them, what could you do to solve that problem? Because you are not going to want them coming up to you during your independent conferencing time. So you're going to have to teach them where can they get the answers. Could you skip it and go on? Well, yes, if you tried everything else, skip it and go on. Could you go back and look at your anchor chart? Can you ask a friend? Think about all those things you want them to do to problem solve a word when they get into a tricky spot.
And if they're coming up too often, they're in too hard of a drive.
Right.
So keep your mind open to that. Maybe you need to talk with them after a workshop about selecting another text.
And we are going to watch a video on classroom management, but there was one more section in here about managing conferring in small groups. That's going to be something you're going to probably want to read on your own, but just a tip that I have for you is thinking of a way for you to keep track of who you've conferred with and how often you confer with them. So I'm going to use Leslie Carlene as an example. She has 2 classrooms that she did reading workshop with, and then the second year she had 3 groups of reading workshop because she was at 5th grade and they did some training with students. So the only way she really could manage it is to she got a blank calendar, like a sheet that had boxes for each day, and she had a calendar for each class, and she would write down who she met with each day, and then she had a different way of keeping track of her notes. but she did have one that was just kind of a student tracker to help her know, oh gosh, I haven't met with Johnny for 4 days. I need to go back and check with him on what he was working on the last time we talked. That's really important to come up with a way for you to track the students you meet with. And Lucy did talk in her book about how she felt like it was okay when she was conferring if kids would come up and kind of follow her around the room and listen in when she was talking with you, because she thinks all these kids are going to be listening to what you're saying. And we've learned that they do that, especially in writer's workshop. But we would recommend them not just following you around the room, because we feel like that might be kind of a waste of time. One thing I thought would possibly work is using some sticky notes with a question mark on it, telling the kids to put a question mark and slap it in their book. Because when I'm done working with this student, I'm circulating the room, and then would be a good time for you to say, you would raise your hand and show me in your book what your question was about. And so I could come over to you when I was not with a small group, when I was not with an individual, teach them how to put sticky notes in there for questions for teacher when she's available. Does that make sense? I don't know, try it, see if it helps. But I don't like the idea of kids up out of their seats walking around not reading. So that's something that you might try. Okay, like I said, there's lots more in the management piece that we didn't get to, but I think we covered the bulk of it.
I think sometimes it's easy to just say, they're so off task, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I like what she says here. First of all, you need to congratulate yourself for identifying and naming the problem. I'm having a problem with my kids not staying on task during independent time or whatever. And if she says you are far closer to a solution once you have looked us in the eye and said this is important. So don't be afraid to say, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this, because we're all stronger at other things and not so strong at some things. And so don't be afraid to go next door and say, how do you do this? Because I'm having trouble. There's nothing wrong. Congratulations for accepting that's a problem. So that's the beginning of a solution, is understanding reality and that it's not working, because it's not going to be perfect at first. It's taken a long time to.
Don't they say, girls, that it takes 3 years to get really good at the workshop? Don't they say that?
I think some of the teachers have said they feel so much better. We had some experienced, awesome teachers in first grade that I worked with regularly, and they loved how they were teaching reading. They really weren't using the basics, but they did daily 5, they had centers, they were doing guided reading groups, they were doing all their, it was a lot of work to put all those centers together, but they loved it, and it was working for them. Their kids were reading, and they were kind of reluctant to start workshop. And so they were probably our hardest ones to get on board, but once they tried it out the first year, it's like, this is kind of fun. Second year it was better, and this year they were like experts at it. So they realized that their kids can handle it, and that it was a good change. And so it takes a while, but
don't give
hard
up
at first,
and don't be too
allow
hard on yourself
to fail.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the things that somebody who worked at the Teachers College, who's also a teacher, had said, allow yourself to fail. It's okay. You've got to jump in, and you've got to try it. You've got to see what works for you, and there's always time to
There's always going to be little
improve and
things
help.
that you're going to probably need to tweak, or you're going to want to try something different, because something, a piece of it's not working quite. Like, I'm going to use Leslie Carlene again as an example. She is notorious for, again, because she's got so many kids, she has to be meticulously organized and has to have, lots of records, because she has so many kids. She needs to remember where she's at with each one of them. And almost probably once a month when I went in to visit with her, she would say, let me tell you what I'm trying, or this is not working, I've got to change, and so she came up all the time with something different to try to make it work for the volume of kids that she had, because she was committed to doing an awesome job with workshop. And it was very challenging. There were parts of it that were very challenging for her. And so I feel like she was probably one of the best teachers that I've ever met as far as being very self-reflective and, saying to herself, all right, this is not working, or I don't like that this isn't going as, I think it should be going better. So I want to change a part. And a lot of that involved the way that she met with her kids, or her tracking devices for herself that she used. She would try a lot of different paperwork type things to keep track of stuff. So anyway, just don't be afraid to seek out help or try something if you need to visit with us about what other options there are. Okay, so the video you're going to watch is first grade. And I want you to watch it and be thinking of two ways. I'm going to take a break before the video.
Whatever you think.
It's 15 minutes, 16-minute video.
Okay.
Do you guys want a break?
So when we get back from break, I want you to have a T-chart and just use scrap paper, or I have some, this is an extra sheet that got copied. The T-chart is going to say, I want you to watch what the students are doing in the video and what the teacher's doing in the video. So you're going to have two parts, kind of document what's going on. Raise your hand if you need just a scrap piece of paper. Does everybody have a scrap piece? Okay.
What are we writing on the T-shirt again?
Back what we missed.
What the students are doing, what you see the students doing, and what you see the teacher doing, as far as management.
It seems like.
Kind of is a good example of what a room looks like too. See how she has the room set up?
So leaders, I gathered the three of you over here because let me show you what I noticed. You went right to your reading spot and then you picked up your book and you just started reading. You forgot that important work of making predictions before reading, right? So right now, let's spend some time together as a small group to think what our books might be about. Because remember, this is serious business. It's going to help us figure out tricky words. It's going to help us understand what's happening in this story, okay? So I'm going to give each of you a Post-it. And I want you to take out an invisible pen, okay? A pen that's not really real. And I want you to think for a minute and pretend to write down your prediction. Write down this prediction, okay? What do you think's going to happen? Do this serious work, okay? Invisible pen. Pretend.
Okay. Nobody opened the book.
Did any of you flip through some of the pages yet? Because I didn't see that yet. Flip through some of the pages. Get started with that. Okay, can you close your books now? Now that you've done some more of this intense work of looking through the pages and thinking, can you go back to your seats and write down your prediction of this book? Go ahead, back to your seat. Out your book. Your book here. Take a seat right here. Here, take a seat right here. Can you sit right here, right facing this way? Okay. So I gathered. Sure. Okay, I gathered both of you over because just now as I was walking around, I heard something. I heard that maybe you weren't reading with your best storyteller voice, okay? And I was confused because you both just did such a great job during shared reading with a storyteller voice, right? You noticed punctuation, you changed your voice when people were excited, you matched your voice to the characters, right? So I'm wondering if you two can spend some time on the rug rereading the book we just read, The Scrubbing Machine. I think this will help us get into the idea of reading like a storyteller, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave you on the rug right here. And I'm wondering if Danica can read a page, and then if Mira can read a page, reading like a storyteller, just like we did. Can you do that? Okay, why don't you start? Let me watch for a second. Go ahead. Okay. Now Danica, this is your spot. Read like a storyteller. Does she read this page? She reads this page, then you read this page. Go ahead, Danica. I'm gonna leave you here, and I'm gonna continue going around, okay? Scrub her house and make it clean. Oh, she turned it on. The machine was gone. Here she was. It scrubbed her table, it scrubbed her chair. It scrubbed her dress, it scrubbed She tried to turn it off, the machine went off. So Bree, I just brought you over quickly because you know what? I've been watching you as a reader these past couple weeks and I'm pretty impressed. You've been doing a great job of reading. Can you quickly read this book to me? Because I think you're ready to start reading H-type books, right? Can you go ahead and can you go ahead and start reading that to me? Okay, go ahead. Katie went to school. Katie went to school and ran to Katie said, stop. Butterflies. Butterfly was opening and shutting its beautiful black and orange wings. Won't it fly away? Then unwound like a ring. First, look on your try coffee for a moment. Readers, great practice. Now practice this back at your table seat. Go ahead. I'll take it. Go ahead, read like a storyteller. You're doing such a beautiful job with these type of H books that I'm going to ask you later on when you bookshop, I would like you to get all books out of the H bin. Can you do that for me? Are you proud of yourself? Good job. Go ahead back to your seat. Great work, okay? Readers, right now, don't do it yet. It's time for partner reading. But before you go off to partner reading, because I can see you're excited to go, think back to that really smart work we did in shared reading.
You did such a good job of reading like a storyteller by noticing punctuation and by matching your voice to the character. Try to do that when you're reading to your partner, okay? Because you're storytellers too with your partner. Go ahead off to partner reading. You have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead, right to partner reading. So readers, I brought you two over because I noticed that both of you are reading some of these Froggy books, right? Yeah, and I think you really like them because I've been seeing you reading them a lot in your reading baggie. But this made me think, since we are reading a lot of Froggy books, we know a lot about Froggy books. So we can use what we already know in these books to help us solve the problem that Froggy's gonna come across. Remember when we read Mrs. Wishy-Washy and we thought about what we already knew? Remember, Lee, how they were kind of like, we know they're gonna get stuck in the mud. We know Mrs. Wishy-Washy's gonna be mad. We can do some of that same work in our own series books, Lee. So right now, I want you to think, what do you know usually happens in Froggy books? Think for a second. What do you think usually happens? Do you have an idea? What usually happens in Froggy books, Kyle?
Froggy's always getting into trouble. And do you know in this book, do you know that when they're online, Froggy's dad says, when you get to Hawaii, don't act like an nincompoop.
You said something smart, Kyle. You said Froggy's always getting in trouble. So we know that's always going to be an issue in that book. So we can keep that in our minds as we're reading to help us solve the problem. So when you're reading one of these Froggy books today and you're writing your problem post-it, think about what you already know about Froggy books to help you solve that problem. I'm going to hand you some books. When you get back to your seat, go ahead and back to private reading. Partner reading. Okay, go ahead. Thanks, readers. Oh, Harrison and Elizabeth, I can tell you're so into your book, which makes me happy, but put your eyes up on me, Elizabeth. Okay, readers, We have done a lot of reading work today. Give yourself a nice pat on the back. We've done so much work, in fact, that it's going to be hard for us to remember all of that work. And remember, readers, we don't just do that hard reading work here in school, Lee. We also take that reading work home with us when we read out of our reading baggies. So let's do a little bit of work to remind ourselves of the work we did today. Right now, I'm gonna take out of my supply area an invisible Post-it. And what I mean by that is it's not real, but I'm gonna pretend. Watch me as I take it out, Ava. Okay, I have it down. I'm gonna write with my invisible pen about all the things we did today as readers. If you want to do this, go ahead and join in with me. Take out your invisible Post-it. Okay, is your invisible pen ready? Okay, let's write it down. Write it with me. Okay, so we made predictions before reading. That was one thing. Another thing we did today is, oh right, we found that spot in our books where there's a little problem, right? Another thing we did today is we tried to solve the problem. We predicted how the problem was going to be solved. Is there anything else? Oh, we did a really good job of reading like storytellers. Oh, good. Do you have it all written down? Oh, fold it up, and put it in your reading baggie. Put it in. Now you have all your ideas for how you can read tonight with your families. But oh wait, I can tell you're excited. Let me do one more thing to show off our reading work. Right now, I'm gonna put a red bin on top of this shelf. I would like you to search through your reading baggie and find the book where you did awesome prediction Post-its so I can look over those Post-its tonight. When you have that book, hold it in the air so I can see those Post-its. All right, go ahead and clean up for reading workshop. Go ahead. I'll take.
Okay. Just turn to the person next to you and kind of go through your list, and some of the things you found might be similar and some might be different. Share with each other.
What makes me tired?
She thought this child was ready to move up. She wanted to just double check and make sure. So she listened to her read, probably did a retelling of some sort, and then she said, okay, go ahead and pick out some H books today. So again, don't hold kids back because you don't have time to test them. Listen to them read that next level book and see where they're at and keep moving them forward. You'll know if they've gone too far, and hopefully that won't be the case, but just be very cautious about moving them up and listening to them read a couple of those books, and if you feel like they're ready, then move them on up. Let's see. So she had some attention signals and some countdowns. She used a kind of a variety, not the same one every time. One of them, their hands went to their head. One of them was several times she used a countdown. I think in her another video she does a lot of thumbs up, thumbs down, that kind of thing. Let's see. What did you think about when they're bringing kids out of their seats? What were the kids doing while she was working with small groups? Pretty on task, weren't they? Okay, so we talked about how did that happen? You know, it's not magic day. I'm sure they probably were good because there was a camera there. But she, you know, you said she's already laid the foundation beforehand from day one, and that's really is how it happens. I thought it was interesting one of the reasons I chose that video was because you can see her working with a single student, you can see her working with a partner, you can see her working with a group of 3, so you can see kind of the different ways that she's doing grouping. And we even talked about how we thought, I don't know if this was conscious or not, but she had the 2 kids reading, practicing their storyteller voice while she was assessing one over here. So she could very easily glance over to make sure that those kids were doing what they were supposed to be doing, or kind of getting, you know, a good idea of how they're doing with it while she's even listening to this student read. So again, it's like Angie said, I'm exhausted just watching her. She's multitasking constantly. You know, she's thinking about how many students she met within that small amount of time, and that's really, you do have to get pretty good at that multitasking. And also, there's going to be a little bit of prep work in that small group, you know, scenario where she's going to want to have some books thought or put aside. She's going to want to have a book picked out to do an informal reading assessment. She might want to do a small group mini lesson on something and have a shared reading text there prepared. So this part of the lesson, you might have a little bit of planning and prep work to do. You know, this is already planned for you, but you have to really stop and think about what your kids are going to need in small groups and individuals for this part. Okay. I really liked how it showcased the partners in this video because they were, I love it. It makes my heart happy when I see kids cuddled up next to their friend, reading a book and reading with expression, and they seem like they're just having a great time and really enjoying it, and they're engaged, you know. So that was kind of cool for me to see because that's the whole purpose. That's what we're here for. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay, this goes perfectly into, there are 2 more things we want to cover today. We will try to get it done. Let me do it all. Okay, that's okay.
Sorry.
I go into small group work, which is what you just saw, and conferring, which is what you just saw. So it's really perfect. It goes right together. Okay, so those are 2 chapters. The small group work chapter, we're going to read, I think, 5 pages of it, not all of it. And then we're going to do the conferring chapter, 4 pages of it. So not 2 more chapters, but not all the way through both chapters. Okay? All right, so let's look at small group work. That shows you there what we're going to be reading. Okay, I've changed that. Let me get my notebook. We're not reading all of those pages. First of all, everybody look at the first page, which is 69 for intermediate, primary is 103, and middle school is 107. Look at that first page. And find the bottom paragraph there that starts with there. It's not, well, that's confusing. It doesn't start the paragraph there, but it's down here in the middle there. It's the same word. That's confusing. Down in the middle of the last paragraph, it starts with there. I'm going to read that. It says, there have been so many books written on how to lead small groups in the precisely right ways that too many teachers approach a little hub of readers gripped by anxiety over doing this the right way. Meanwhile, the whole point is to be personal, to be responsive, and to challenge kids to do some work while you observe and coach. That's so important. So don't be so worried about, oh gosh, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm not going to do any groups because I don't know how to do it. Don't be afraid. If she says do it. Just do it. Just try it, and that's the only way you get better at it. Don't be so worried about doing it right. Okay, so primary, you might need to write this down. It might get a little bit confusing. Primary, read to stop at small group shared reading. You're going to follow after that paragraph where we just were and go to small group shared reading. So it's 3 pages. Okay, that's what you're going to read. Does everybody see that? Okay. Intermediate, you're going to read, these are very different, so it's hard to plan this because these chapters are really different, primary, intermediate, and middle. Okay, so intermediate, you're going to read principles, find where it starts with principles. It's over a couple pages. Find it on page 73, principles. Nope, that's wrong. Sorry. You're going to do to be responsive, which is 70 to 72. Okay, top of page 70, to be responsive, and read through page 72. That's 3 pages also. Okay, that makes sense? Please ask if you're not sure. Middle school, 107 to 110. That's just you, right? Okay. Okay, read 3 pages and then we will talk.